Thanks for joining me today at InvestorIdeas.com, Cleantech and Climate Change podcast, looking at today's problems and solutions for the future. I'm your host, Dawn Van Zandt, founder of InvestorIdeas.com, and hoping to share our way of making a difference in climate change. Good morning. Today, Investor Ideas is talking to Alon Ozer, Chief Investment Officer of Omnia Family Wealth, that serves more than 50 families of significant wealth. Omnia Family Wealth is a multi-billion-dollar wealth management firm, and they believe clean energy should be a national priority to keep the U.S. a world leader in innovation and tech. You can learn more about them at www.omniawealth.com. So good morning, and thanks for joining us today on the Cleantech and Climate Change podcast. For our listeners, can you give us an overview and some background on the Omnia Family Wealth and also when you got involved with it?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation. Omnia Family Wealth is a multi-family office located in Ventura, Florida. We help families with their wealth management, estate planning, philanthropy. We, the team, have been managing institutional capital for most of our careers, and at some point we felt that it's time to offer families something better, a superior alternative for the traditional wire houses, and we created the firm. And I joined about 2 years ago. I managed an endowment prior to that, but I knew the team for almost 10 years, and what they were doing, it was exciting, and I joined the ride.
And one of the things I really like is Omnia just recently announced, regarding COVID and looking at everything moving forward, how this is really serving as a wake-up call for them and everyone to create a new sustainable future moving forward. So can you talk about that vision and the plan and what it looks like for Omnia?
Yes, absolutely. So we recently wrote a memo, and we called it, "We just can't let this crisis go to waste, and clean energy must be a national priority." And the reason is because crises, unfortunately, of course, they create unique and rare opportunities to make a change. A crisis usually emphasizes the problems that we have at hand and the real priorities in life, and it gets the undivided attention of the public, but also government officials. Both become more open to the ideas of most of the ideas that have been on the back burner for years, and suddenly they wake up and they think it's a good idea because of the push that they get. And so as a family office, we obviously are driven by the needs and the visions of the families that we serve. And sustainable future for the next generations is definitely at the top of the list of their priorities. So we had the need, but we needed the opportunity. And I think this is the time. This is the opportunity that we see. And we as the nation, if we avoid this, we skip this opportunity, that's going to be a crime. That's going to be, for generations, we're going to be sorry for this.
And one of the key points that you point out in your memo is you want to look at government and private money working hand in hand to really create this clean tech economy. How do you see that realistically working?
Correct, and this is the main point in the memo. And what happened is that in order to fill the hole created by the pandemic in the financial markets, but also in the real economy, the Federal Reserve especially has printed, depends how you look at it, about $3 trillion. And without money, the Fed is buying U.S. Treasuries, keeps the rate low, but most importantly, they finance the fiscal policy by buying the government debt. And that's how they support the PP program and other packages. But the Fed is also buying debts of bonds of private and especially below investment grade companies to stabilize markets and keep these companies afloat and not going out of business. And this is the main important point to understand. By buying the debt, the Fed is willing to bear the losses if occur of these companies. It's actually the Treasury Department. That's not the point. So if we take this idea further, the government can also do something else. They can offer to cap the losses or participate in the downside of private capital. If they invest in certain important technologies that the government sees as a priority. The government can also offer tax incentives or match the investment amount. And this is something that has been done in history in other countries, for example, in Israel in the 90s, early 90s, and that's helped tremendously in job generation and quality of life in general. There's so much money right now that has been raised in the last couple of years by private equity firms, venture capital firms, and the government can provide them a great incentive to invest this capital in certain areas that are important for us as a nation, and especially clean energy. And what we do right now is it just isn't productive. Where's the long-term planning? Where is the smart capital allocation to stimulate future growth, right? By buying debt of current companies, it's you're plugging a hole. You're not looking forward. We're already behind China, for example, in 5G and artificial intelligence because we don't invest enough in R&D. And this crisis just creates that opportunity. I mean, we know what's going to happen with the debt. Unfortunately, we can't go back. We know we're going to go way over 100% of GDP. But we better have something to show for it.
I agree. It's definitely a Band-Aid. A lot of people have said that COVID-19 really kind of removed the veil, removed the curtains of some of the underlying problems that were already there, and it just really, exemplified what was there, like really showed it, made it clear. So I'm excited to see your group focusing on clean energy. Obviously, it's a passion of mine. One of the other things I noticed in your memo is you really talked about the relationship between health and pollution. And I know I've looked at some Harvard studies that really looked at, areas with high pollution. The impact from COVID-19 was higher, obviously, because it's, infecting your lungs. So I was just curious where your group turns to for research when you're looking at, a new direction. Where do you get your insight in your research?
Yes, you're 100% correct. This is, I can't take the credit here, unfortunately. Some of the best ideas and leads that we get in general are from clients, but especially this time. Some of our clients are senior physicians, former CEOs of hospitals, and they have tremendous amount of knowledge, experience, and obviously contacts in the industry. But this time they were ahead of the curve. We didn't even think about it at the beginning. We didn't put the dots together. I'm talking about, early March. And we had a couple of conversations with some of our clients, and we said, okay, this is a little bit more than, it's obviously not our field, but we were able to get information and then put the dots together and said, you know what, this is major. This could be much more significant than what people think. And this is not just one thing. COVID is one thing, but you can have other issues that affect the health of the U.S. population in general because of pollution and other diseases that are created by this. And this is not short term. This is long term.
Well, especially some of the research that's come out with forest fires, and you look at it in California, but particularly they saw it in Australia. People that were exposed to forest fires within a very short time had almost identical symptoms to some of what you're seeing in COVID because it's the particulates that are going into your lungs. So, there is a direct correlation to climate change and clean technology and dealing with all of this moving forward. As you said, it isn't just COVID-19. There's going to be a lot of future health issues that are impacted by, not using clean technology and not looking at sustainability. So I'm really glad, again, to see your group focusing on that because it's not something that a lot of people are correlating. A lot of people are, just looking at COVID as an isolated incident, but right. I think it's just part of the bigger narrative. So, looking at your investment strategy, have you started to plan out any specific, subsectors in clean tech, in terms of innovation? And is there anything that you're seeing in the pipeline that's exciting you? Or again, are you looking at direction from clients, or do you have kind of a roadmap so far?
So in this case, it's both. We look at technology in general for investments, but we now put more emphasis on some of the clean technologies that we see. And the two main areas are energy generation and storage, of course. So the holy grail for us is alternative sources of energy, and if somebody can find a way to replace diesel, which is poison, that would be a big win for everybody. I love trends in microgrids, for example, to have a more sustainable grid. This is something that's affecting Florida specifically in times of hurricanes and communities here. We look at the automobile and heavy equipment industries, and I don't consider electric cars as green. It's all about the sources of energy, how you generate the energy, not how you store it. And many of the technologies that we hear about are very capital intensive, especially in fuel cells and hydrogen, because other than R&D, they have to think about infrastructure, how to store the energy, a reliable way to deliver the fuel, and also the locations, safe locations of fueling those vehicles. And we saw a couple of companies that can gap that problem, and this is something that's actually very exciting because they have much shorter time to market.
And looking at your overall strategy, and you've just really announced this, being honest, like how much of your overall investment strategy is sustainability and Cleantech going to represent? Is just a small part, or is this really going to be a future direction overall for Omnia?
So I think that it is significant. Obviously, we can't put, because of risk management, we manage wealth. We can't put everything in one bucket or because it's high risk. But it's definitely significant in terms of percentages and in terms of capital. It's also, and that comes from the families that we work for. And for us as managers of multi-generational wealth, by definition, we have to focus on long term, and that's where we're going to see the impact on the ground, but also on the returns. So you have to have it as part of your ongoing strategy. This is not a one-time where you put capital and then you just let it run. It's not the S&P 500. And this is, it's not a change of thinking, but it is a change of priorities that's coming from some of the families, where once they saw the opportunity, because again the will was there, we need to take advantage of that, and we just hope that the government will also step in and do something like that, because we know the impact and could be so positive going long term that it's just going to be a crime to avoid it.
Well, one of the things I always loved from comparing corporate to indigenous cultures, they say corporate mentality is quarter to quarter and indigenous is generation to generation. So it's nice to see that that's being integrated by Omnia. So because we have to think that way, especially when we have children and grandchildren. So again, personally, really like to see it. And I always like to get a sense of the person I'm speaking to on a personal note. So just in closing, thank you for joining us. But I'd like to get, what is your personal connection to this commitment to clean energy? What does it mean to you?
This is, of course, on several levels. I remember when I was a kid, struggling from high costs of energy, my parents especially, and this is something that I remember until now, basically. what's happening in the world, all the disasters that we see, it's at some point you understand that we are heading into a disaster. And once it hits you, you just can't get over it. You have to, everything else the other problems look much smaller. You want to look at the big picture and be able to build something better for your kids. About 7 years ago, a friend of mine came to me with an idea that his dad had. And it sounded so crazy back then, but I said, you know what? Maybe there's something in it. And just recently, they have their company and there is a little bit of capital, and they got to the point where they developed a clean energy, technology that is so amazing that I'm so happy that I was there to help them with that. I don't get any compensation or stake in the company or anything, but this technology has the power to really change the energy market. And if it does, just by itself, it was worth it. All this time that I helped these guys.
Well, thank you very much for joining me, and I would definitely like to do a follow-up in the next year, see what the group is doing, what your strategy has, really focused and narrowed in on, and what kind of investments you're making. So I think that would be, great for our listeners. It's great to hear the initial mission, but then the follow-through I think is really important. So I'd really like to talk to you again in the future.
Absolutely. That would be wonderful. And thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you.
To hear more Cleantech podcasts, visit the Cleantech and Climate Change page on Investor Ideas. You can find it on our top template. Also, Investor Ideas has a lineup of other podcasts and themes, including the AII, the Crypto Corner, our cannabis podcast called Cannabis News and Stocks on the Move, rated one of the top investor podcasts in the sector, Play by Play, a podcast looking at sports and esports news, and Exploring Mining. To listen to any of our podcasts, visit our podcast page on Investor Ideas at investorideas.com/audio. And a reminder, you can hear our podcasts on Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, Google Play Music, and most audio platforms available to you. If you like any of our podcasts, we would appreciate you recommending them or reviewing them on your audio platform. And to help you follow and track clean tech and renewable energy stocks, Investor Ideas has created a directory of publicly traded stocks in the sector. You can find that by going to our homepage, looking on the sidebar and looking at renewable energy and environmental themes, and you'll find our stock directories there. Investor Ideas does remind all of investors to read our disclaimers and disclosures on our site. You can find them at investorideas.com/about-disclaimer.asp. It is important to read these. And this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investment involves risk and a possible loss of investment. Thank you again and have a great day.